is the cross section of a human heart. Our heart is enclosed in a membrane bound connective tissue known as pericardium. Pericardium covers our heart and it contains a fluid which is known as pericardial fluid. Pericardial fluid protects the heart walls from friction, while pericardium, the protective membrane, protects the heart from too much expansion and during the heartbeat. So pericardial fluid and pericardium both perform the function of protection of our heart. If we look at the structure of our heart wall is made up of three types of tissues: epicardium, myocardium and endocardium. Epicardium is the outermost layer of our heart. Epicardium is made up of connective tissue which makes the outer wall of the heart, while the inner wall of the heart is made up of epithelial cells, endothelial cells known as endocardium, while the middle and the thick portion of the heart wall is made up of myocardium. So our heart wall is made up of epicardium, outermost layer, endocardium, innermost layer, while the myocardium, the middle thick layer of the heart wall. If we look at the structure and cross section of myocardium contain cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscles are specialized muscles which are involuntary and are made up of specialized cardiac cells which contain actin and myosin proteins. Each cardiac muscle is branched and contain different cells with each cell having a separate nucleus. Our cardiac muscles have striation, as you can see in this diagram, due to the presence of actin and myosin proteins. One more important component of the cardiac muscle is intercalated disc. Intercalated disc separates two cardiac cells. Now if we look at the chambers of heart, our heart is composed of four chambers. The first chamber is right atrium. Right atrium contain two blood vessels which brings deoxygenated blood from the body. The one is superior vena cava while the other is inferior vena cava. Both these blood vessels bring deoxygenated blood from all over the bodies and pour this blood into this chamber which is known as right atrium. It is right atrium because it is located on the right side of the body. This right atrium empties the blood into another chamber known as right ventricle. In between the right atrium and right ventricle, there is present a valve known as tricuspid valve. If we look at the ultrastructure of the tricuspid valve, we see that this valve is composed of three flaps of tissue, as you can see in the diagram 1, 2, 3. So these three flaps of tissue are made up of specialized connective tissues which are connected with papillary muscles with the help of chordae tendineae. Chordae tendineae are special cords made up of tendon connective tissue, while papillary muscles are located in the wall of our heart. These valves does not allow the blood to go back into the right atrium. When blood comes right atrium into left atrium, after that the blood leaves the right ventricle through a blood vessel known as pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery takes this blood towards the lungs for oxygenation. At the base of pulmonary artery there is present a valve known as pulmonary semilunar valve. This valve does not allow the blood to come back into the right atrium. When blood leaves the heart and it goes to lungs for oxygenation, and after oxygenation the blood returns towards heart through special blood vessels known as pulmonary veins. So these are two pulmonary veins, each from each lung. These pulmonary veins, as you can see here, bring oxygenated blood into the heart chamber known as left atrium. This left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the lungs. After receiving the blood from lungs, this chamber empties blood into the left ventricle. There is a valve present between left atrium and left ventricle. This valve is known as bicuspid valve. If we look at the structure of the bicuspid valve, it is composed of two flaps of connective tissue which are attached with papillary muscle with the help of chordae tendineae. This valve does not allow the blood to go back into the left atrium. When left ventricle filled with blood, it gives blood to the another blood vessel which is known as aorta. Aorta is the major blood vessel which carries oxygenated blood to all parts of the body. But at the base of the aorta there is present another valve which does not allow the blood to come back. This valve is known as aortic semilunar valve. This is called semilunar because its shape is like a half moon. That is why we called it semilunar valve. First of all, deoxygenated blood from upper parts of the body like head, neck, shoulder and arms is brought into the right atrium through superior vena cava. Superior vena cava is the blood vessel which carry deoxygenated blood from upper parts of the body into the right atrium. Similarly, the deoxygenated blood from lower part of the body like legs, thighs and lower abdomen, the deoxygenated blood come into right atrium via inferior vena cava. So inferior vena cava is a blood vessel which carries deoxygenated blood from lower part of the body into the right atrium. When right atrium of the heart is filled up with deoxygenated blood, this chamber of the heart contracts and blood moves into the next chamber which is known as right ventricle. Right ventricle is when filled up with the blood, it contracts and blood move into the pulmonary trunk. So in this way our deoxygenated blood changes into oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood is returned back to the heart via pulmonary veins. So these red color pulmonary veins, as you can see, are coming from left and right lungs of our body. They bring oxygenated blood into the left atrium of the heart. This whole process or this whole circulation is known as pulmonary circulation. So let's make a summary of pulmonary circulation. First of all, body, deoxygenated blood from the body brings into right atrium. Right atrium pumps this blood into right ventricle. Right ventricle pumps the blood into pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery sends this blood into the lungs for oxygenation. In the lungs, oxygenated blood come back to the left atrium via pulmonary veins. This whole circulation is known as pulmonary circulation. Now, oxygenated blood has come into the left atrium. This chamber of the heart will contract and oxygenated blood will go into the left ventricle of the heart, which is the largest and strongest chamber of the heart. The powerful contraction of the left ventricle. When this left ventricle contracts, the blood goes into the aortic trunk. Aortic trunk contains semilunar valve, which is also known as aortic semilunar valve, and at the same time there is a valve is present, bicuspid valve present between left atrium and left ventricle, which does not allow the blood to go back. The aortic trunk changes into a big blood vessel which is known as aorta. Aorta takes oxygenated blood to different parts of the body like head, shoulder, arms, abdomen and lower parts of the body. From there, oxygen is given to the tissues of our body and CO2 is taken, and the blood, oxygenated blood has been changed into deoxygenated blood. And deoxygenated blood through inferior vena cava and superior vena cava comes back into the heart in the right atrium. So this circulation we have discussed is known as systemic circulation. So let us summarize it. Systemic circulation: oxygenated blood from left ventricle goes into aorta. Aorta takes this blood to the body. In the body, oxygenated blood turns into deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood through venae cavae, inferior vena cava plus superior vena cava are called venae cavae, are brought into the right atrium of the heart. This circulation is called systemic circulation. So in this